The twin moons hung low in the dark sky, their silver light shining over the poor alien village of Jerax. The streets were cold and empty. The wind was sharp, carrying dust and sadness. Inside a small stone house, a young alien woman named Lyra sat on a wooden chair. Her face was pale, her sharp blue eyes filled with worry. Her family was starving. The crops had failed after a long drought. The village elders had warned that if her family did not pay the debts by sunrise, their home would be taken and her siblings would be thrown out into the cold. Her father was sick and weak. He could not help. Her mother sat quietly in the dark corner, wiping tears. Her little brother and sister huddled together, too tired to cry. Lyra knew she must do something. She had heard of a human warrior who stayed at the outpost near the village. His name was Captain Jack Sloan. He was a strong soldier and had power and money. Some said he was dangerous, but others said he was kind to those who asked for help. Lyra felt afraid, but she had no choice. That night, while the village slept, she put on a thin cloak and left her home. The cold wind touched her skin as she walked quickly through the empty streets. Her hands shook, but she kept walking until she reached the metal building of the human outpost. The door was guarded by 2 soldiers, but they did not stop her. Inside, the room was warm and full of human soldiers talking and laughing. In the corner, Captain Jack Sloan sat alone at a table. His dark uniform was neat, his face calm but tired. He looked up as Lyra walked toward him, his sharp human eyes watching her closely. She stopped in front of him and tried to speak, but her voice was weak. Jack spoke first, his deep voice quiet but firm. "What do you want?" Lyra took a deep breath. She pulled back her hood so he could see her face. "Captain Sloan," she said softly, "I have come with an offer." Jack raised one eyebrow. "An offer?" She dropped her cloak, showing her thin but graceful body. "One night," she said. "Just one night with me. In return, please help my family. They are starving. We have nothing." The room fell silent. The soldiers nearby stopped talking, pretending not to listen, but their eyes were on them. Jack did not speak for a long moment. His face showed no emotion. Lyra's heart beat fast. She felt shame and fear, but stood still, waiting for his answer. Finally, Jack stood up. He was tall and strong. His shadow covered her as he looked down at her. "Come with me," he said simply. She followed him down a short hallway into a small room. He closed the door behind them with a quiet click. Lyra's hands trembled. She expected him to ask her to take off her clothes, but instead, he sat down and pointed to the chair across. "From him, sit," he said. She obeyed. He looked at her calmly. "Why did you think this was your only way?" he asked gently. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. She told him everything about the dead crops, the cruel elders, her sick father, and her starving siblings. Her voice broke when she spoke about her little brother, too weak to stand. When she finished, she lowered her head in shame. "Please," she whispered, "I have nothing else to give." Jack leaned forward, his voice soft but clear. "You do not need to give yourself to me," he said. "You have already shown something greater, your courage." He stood up and walked to the door. "Wait here," he said. Lyra sat in silence, confused and afraid. Minutes later, she heard engines starting outside. She looked through the small window and saw Jack giving orders. Soldiers loaded food, water, and medicine onto trucks. The trucks were ready to drive. To her village, Jack returned and looked at her with a small smile. "Your family will never go hungry again," he said. "Their debts are gone." Lyra's eyes widened. "Why? Why would you do this?" Jack's smile grew warmer. "Because no one should have to offer themselves to save their family," he said quietly. "You reminded me what honor means." Lyra felt tears on her cheeks this time, tears of relief. Outside, under the cold moonlight, Captain Jack watched the trucks drive away toward the poor village. He whispered to himself, "This is what makes us human." In that moment, Lyra realized that a single act of kindness had saved her family, not by selling herself, but by touching the heart of a human warrior. Morning light broke gently over the small village of Jerax. The two suns rose slowly, casting a warm glow on the dusty streets and cracked stone houses. The villagers stirred, yawning and rubbing their eyes, ready for another day of struggle and hunger. But something strange happened that morning, something no one expected. Lyra's house, always dark and quiet, was filled with noise. The sound of engines rumbled outside. Big trucks painted in human colors parked in front of her home. The soldiers unloaded crates filled with food, fresh water, warm clothes, and medicine. The villagers gathered around, their mouths open in shock. They had never seen so many supplies before. Children whispered to each other, pulling at their mother's sleeves, pointing at the tall human soldiers. Inside Lyra's house, her mother cried not tears of sadness this time, but tears of joy. Lyra's father, still weak, sat up slowly on his bed, smiling for the first time in many seasons. The younger children clapped their hands and hugged each other. A soldier handed Lyra a small paper, stamped with an official human seal. It read simply, "All debts cleared. By order of Captain Jack Sloan." News of the human kindness spread quickly through the village. By mid-morning, villagers filled the streets, whispering about what had happened. Many could not believe it. Why would a human help them? They asked. What did Lyra give him in return? Some people guessed that she had traded herself. Others believed that this human captain was different from the stories they had heard. The elders of the village gathered near the well, speaking in hushed voices. They did not like this turn of events. They had used the debts of poor families, like Lyra's, to keep control over the village for many years. Now, in one night, Jack Sloan had destroyed that power. As the sun climbed higher, Captain Jack himself appeared in the village. He walked slowly down the main street, calm and confident. His uniform was clean, his boots polished, and his face serious. The villagers stepped back to let him pass, watching carefully. Some bowed their heads in respect, while others glared at him with cold suspicion. Lyra stood near her home as Jack approached. Their eyes met, and she gave a small, grateful nod. He returned the nod, but said nothing. His job was done, nor so, he thought. Suddenly, a loud voice called out from the crowd. It was Torvak, one of the richest and most powerful elders. He stepped forward, pointing a long finger at Jack. "You have no right to interfere in our village," Torvak shouted. "You may have cleared this one family's debts, but you are not welcome here." The crowd fell silent. Everyone waited for Jack's answer. Jack stood still, his eyes cold and sharp. "I helped a family who is suffering," he said firmly. "That offends you, elder? Then perhaps it is your heart that should be questioned." Torvak's face turned red with anger. "You think you are a hero? You think you understand our ways? You are a stranger here, human. You will never be one of us." Jack did not flinch. His voice was calm. "I don't need to be one of you, but I will not stand by and watch while innocent families starve." The villagers whispered again, some nodding quietly in agreement. For the first time, they saw a human standing up to the cruel elders, and it made them think. But Torvak was not finished. He raised his arm, and from the shadows, several rough-looking men stepped forward. They carried wooden clubs and sharp tools. They were the village enforcers, Torvak's private guards. Their eyes were hard, and their steps heavy. They began to circle Jack slowly. Lyra's heart pounded as she watched. Would this turn into a fight? Would the captain be harmed after all he had done? Jack raised one hand, signaling to his soldiers near the trucks. The human soldiers stood tall, their hands on their weapons. They did not point their guns, but their message was clear. If anyone attacked their captain, they would defend him. Torvak hesitated, realizing he could not win today. His guards stepped back slowly. Jack looked around at the villagers one last time. "Your people deserve better," he said. "I helped this family because they needed it. But you must help yourselves now." Then he turned and walked back toward the trucks, his soldiers falling in behind him. Lyra watched him go, her chest filled with emotion. In just one night and one morning, this human had changed her family's life, maybe even the future of the whole village. But as the trucks rolled out of the village, another shadow was rising. Far away on a rocky hill, a stranger watched the scene through binoculars. His face was hidden, but his smile was cruel. Jack's kindness had caught the attention of dangerous people. Trouble was coming, and soon. Far from the village of Jerax, hidden among sharp rocks on a dusty hill, a figure watched the trucks disappear in the distance. His name was Krell, a ruthless commander from a powerful band of space raiders. His face was hidden behind a metal mask, but behind it, his cruel smile widened. He had seen everything. He had watched Captain Jack Sloan help the poor alien village, paying debts, feeding the weak, giving hope where there had been none. But Krell hated hope. To him, hope made people weak and foolish. His raiders made a living by raiding desperate villages like Jerax, stealing what little they had and forcing them to pay for protection. If Captain Jack changed this village, others would soon ask for help too. That would ruin Krell's business. Krell turned and spoke into a small communicator. His voice was cold and sharp. "Prepare the attack. We strike tonight. We will teach this human captain and these weak villagers what happens when they defy us." Back in the village, Lyra did not know she was being watched from the hills. She spent the day helping her family unpack the crates of supplies. Her mother was already cooking a proper meal for the first time in many months. Her little brother smiled as he held a warm blanket. The neighbors gathered around, watching with curiosity and some jealousy. Whispers filled the air. "Why did the human help her? Will he help us too? Can we trust him?" But deep in her heart, Lyra knew this peace might not last. She felt that something was coming. The way Elder Torvak had looked at Captain Jack earlier had left her uneasy. And now, as night began to fall, the wind seemed colder, sharper. Different at the human outpost, Captain Jack was finishing his report. He sat at a metal desk, writing down what had happened. His soldiers relaxed, thinking their mission was over. But Jack could not relax. He kept remembering the look on Torvak's face, the anger, the hatred. And he knew that wherever weakness lived, opportunists would come to exploit it. His instincts told him danger was near. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the outpost. Red lights flashed. Jack jumped to his feet as one of his soldiers ran in. "Sir, raiders approaching, heavily armed. They're surrounding the village." Without hesitation, Jack grabbed his rifle and helmet. His voice was steady but urgent. "Everyone, move out. Defend the village at all costs." The soldiers raced to their vehicles, engines roaring as they sped toward Jerax. Jack led the convoy, his face hard, his mind sharp. He could not let anything happen to Lyra's family or to the villagers who now looked to him for protection. In the village, panic was spreading. Dark ships landed just outside the houses, and armed raiders jumped out, shouting threats. Villagers screamed and ran for cover. Torvak and his men did nothing. They hid. Leaving the people to face the danger alone, Krell stepped forward, standing tall in the middle of the main street. His voice was loud and cruel. "You thought a human would save you. Foolish aliens. Tonight, Your homes will burn. Your children will starve again. Where is your hero now?" At that moment, bright headlights flashed in the distance. The roar of human engines filled the air as Jack and his soldiers arrived. Without slowing down, the human trucks formed a wall between the villagers and the raiders. Soldiers jumped out, weapons ready, uniforms shining in the moonlight. Jack stepped forward. Standing across from Krell. "I'm here," Jack said simply, his voice like steel. Krell laughed darkly. "You cannot win, human. You're outnumbered." Jack smiled coldly. "We'll see." A tense silence followed, and then the battle began. Blaster shots lit up the night sky. Human soldiers fought bravely, taking cover behind vehicles and stone walls. Villagers, inspired by Jack's courage, began to help, throwing rocks, pulling injured people to safety, and showing courage they didn't know they had. Lyra stayed near her family, holding her brother close, but her eyes watched Captain Jack. He moved like a warrior, calm and strong, protecting everyone as if they were his own people. As the fight raged on, Krell realized his mistake. Jack's soldiers were better trained, better organized, and determined to protect the village. One by one, Krell's raiders fell or fled. Finally, Krell himself was cornered. Jack raised his rifle, but Krell sneered and activated a small device. A flash of light, and Krell disappeared. Cowards escape. The battlefield grew quiet. Jack lowered his weapon and looked around. The villagers were safe. The raiders were defeated for now. But Jack knew this was only the beginning. Krell would return. Worse enemies might come next. But tonight, hope had won. For the first time, the villagers saw that they could stand and fight, especially if they stood together. Jack walked to Lyra's family. Her mother took his hands in hers, thanking him again and again. Her father, still weak, gave him a nod of respect, and Lyra smiled at him, not just with gratitude, but with new trust. As stars filled the sky, Jack whispered to himself again, "This is what makes us human." The village of Jerax was quiet again, but the silence was heavy. The battle was over, but the fear remained. Fires still burned where blaster shots had struck walls. The ground was littered with broken weapons and black scorch marks. Villagers walked slowly through the streets, carrying water, helping the wounded, and repairing their damaged homes. They whispered among themselves, looking over their shoulders often, as if expecting danger to return at any moment. Captain Jack Sloan stood near the center of the village, his arms crossed, watching the villagers work. His soldiers patrolled the edges of the village carefully, scanning the skies. Jack's mind was not at peace. He knew Krell had escaped, and he knew men like Krell never gave up so easily. Lyra approached him quietly, her steps soft but sure. Her blue eyes looked tired, but grateful. She carried a small basket of bread and fruit, holding it out to Jack. "For you and your men," she said gently. "You saved us again. We want to thank you." Jack smiled faintly, accepting the basket but shaking his head. "You owe us nothing," he said. "But this is not over, Lyra." She nodded slowly. "I know. I can feel it. Krell will return. Won't he?" "Yes," Jack answered simply. "And next time, he may bring more than just raiders. He may call in help from the black markets, mercenaries, or even slavers. He will not forgive this." Lyra's face darkened. "Then what can we do? We are just a small village." Jack looked around at the villagers. They were poor and afraid, but he had seen something new in them during the fight. He had seen their courage. They had not run. They had helped. They had defended each other. "You are stronger than you think," Jack said quietly. "But you need to prepare. From now on, this village must defend itself." At that moment, one of Jack's soldiers ran up to him. "Captain, we found something." the soldier said, holding out a small metal device. Jack took it and examined it closely. It was a beacon tracker. Krell had left it behind on purpose. Jack's face grew hard. He marked this village, he said. This beacon is sending a signal, calling others here. Krell has already set his next move. The villagers gathered around, listening in. Fear. Jack raised his voice so everyone could hear. This means more danger is coming. Bigger ships, more weapons, and worse men than Krell's raiders. If we don't prepare now, this village will not survive the next attack. A murmur spread. Through the crowd, some looked ready to run away. Others clenched their fists, anger rising. Lyra stepped forward. Her voice was clear and strong. Then we must learn how to fight. We must train. We must stand together. Jack looked at her proudly. Yes, he said, and I will help you. The next day, training began. The villagers gathered at the center square. Jack and his soldiers taught them how to hold a weapon, how to form lines, how to build strong walls around the village. Women, men, and even older children joined. Every hour was busy with practice drills, repairs, planning defenses. The village that had once seemed weak was starting to look like a small fortress. Jack worked alongside them. He showed them how to set traps at the village edge. He taught them how to make simple alarms and where to hide when the fight came again. The villagers listened carefully, eager to learn. Even Elder Torvak, who had once hated Jack, now watched from a distance. Slowly, even Torvak's loyal men began to help. Lyra trained as well. She learned to shoot a blaster. She practiced until her hands stopped shaking and her aim became true. Jack watched her progress and felt proud, but inside, he felt the weight of responsibility. If this village fell, he would blame himself. On the fourth night after the attack, Jack climbed a small tower at the edge of the village and looked into the darkness. Far away, just at the edge of sight, he saw something that made his heart beat faster. Lights in the sky, moving in formation. They're coming, he whispered to himself. He climbed down quickly and went straight to Lyra. Wake everyone, he said firmly. Tonight may be the night. The next threat is here. The villagers moved fast. Fires were lit to give light. Guards took positions. Weapons were checked. Jack's soldiers stood ready alongside the villagers. Everyone knew this was not just a fight for one family anymore. It was a fight for their future. As the distant lights drew closer, Jack stood at the front gate. His face was hard, his mind clear. Whatever came next, he would face a hand. This time, he would not be alone. Night covered the village of Jerax in a cold, deep silence. But every villager was awake. Fires burned at the edges of the stone walls, casting flickering light on tired but determined faces. Inside their homes, mothers held their children close, whispering quiet words of courage. The wind carried a tense feeling. Danger was coming. Captain Jack Sloan stood at the main gate, eyes fixed on the distant horizon. The lights in the sky were closer now, dozens of ships moving together, dark shapes against the stars. These were not simple raiders. These were mercenaries, drawn by Krell's beacon, hired to destroy and take everything of value. Jack could feel the weight of what was about to happen. Lyra stood beside him, holding a blaster. Her blue skin was pale, but her hands were steady. She had trained hard these last days, like all the villagers. Her eyes met Jack's for a brief moment, and she gave a small nod. She was ready. The villagers who once had no hope were now warriors. Behind the walls, they stood in lines, armed with simple weapons. Jack's soldiers had given them old rifles, taught them to reload, and helped them build strong defenses. They had set traps along the paths and hidden alarms among the rocks. But still, Jack knew this would not be an easy fight. Suddenly, a Loud voice boomed from a speaker attached to one of the ships overhead. "Surrender now, and you may live." The voice was cold and cruel, echoing through the streets. Jack stepped forward, his voice steady and loud. "This is human territory. Now, these people are under my protection. If you want them, you will have to come through me." His words were simple, but they sent a wave of courage through the villagers. Murmurs of agreement rose. For once, they believed they could stand. The ships landed outside the walls. Armored men poured out, dressed in black, carrying heavy weapons. Krell was not among them, but this was clearly his revenge. The mercenaries advanced quickly, forming lines ready to attack. Jack raised his hand. "Hold your fire," he commanded calmly. "Wait, wait." The villagers held their breath. The mercenaries marched closer, shouting insults and threats. Some even laughed, believing this would be an easy fight against simple villagers. Then, as the first mercenaries crossed into range, Jack gave the order. Now, the night exploded with light and sound. Blaster fire streaked through the air. Traps hidden along the ground burst open, sending spikes and fire up into the enemy ranks. The villagers, standing side by side, fired bravely, their hands steady. Because of the training Jack had given them, the first wave of mercenaries fell quickly, surprised by the strong defense. But they regrouped fast and attacked again, this time spreading out, trying to climb over the walls. Jack moved quickly, fighting alongside his soldiers and the villagers. He directed everyone, giving orders, pointing out dangers. His voice stayed calm even as blaster shots flew past him. Lyra stayed close to her family, but she fired bravely from behind cover. She could see fear in the eyes of the mercenaries as they realized the villagers were not weak anymore. The battle lasted through the night. Again and again, the mercenaries attacked, and again the villagers pushed them back. Jack felt pride in how they fought. No one gave up. No one ran. Even Torvak, the old elder who had once hated Jack, was now fighting beside him, swinging a heavy staff at any enemy who came too close. But as the sky began to turn gray with the coming dawn, Jack knew the villagers were tired. Their weapons were running low on power. Some of the walls had been damaged. The enemy still had more men suddenly. A larger ship appeared over the horizon, a command ship, twice as large as the others, armed with powerful cannons. Jack's face hardened. This was the real attack. The mercenaries had been softening them up, and now the final blow was coming. The villagers saw the ship, and fear spread again. Lyra ran to Jack's side. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice shaking. Jack looked at the ship calmly, thinking fast. "We fight until the end," he said. "But there is one thing left we can try." He called his soldiers to him and quickly explained a risky plan. The villagers watched as he pointed to the command ship. "This will be dangerous," he told them. "But if we succeed, the enemy will lose their leader, and the rest will scatter." Lyra grabbed his arm. "I want to help," she said firmly. Jack smiled. "You already have helped more than you know. Now trust me." The sun began to rise, casting golden light over the battlefield. The villagers, tired but determined, stood ready. The final fight was about to begin. Suspense for next part. A powerful command ship has arrived, and Jack is planning a dangerous move to strike at the enemy leader. But what exactly is his plan? The golden light of morning touched the broken walls of Jerax as the villagers prepared for what could be their final stand. The large enemy command ship hovered above the village now, its shadow dark and heavy. The hum of its engines filled the air. Mercenaries regrouped on the ground, waiting for the order to destroy everything. Captain Jack Sloan stood at the front gate, watching the ship carefully. His mind worked fast, thinking through every risk. The villagers looked to him with wide, tired eyes. They had fought bravely all night, but now they were running out of weapons and strength. Lyra stood close by, holding her blaster tightly, her face pale but determined. Even Elder Torvak was silent, waiting for Jack's next move. Jack raised his voice so all could hear. "Listen carefully. We cannot win if we stay behind these walls. The enemy command ship controls this battle. If we destroy that ship, the mercenaries will lose their leader and their courage. They will run." The villagers murmured, fear and hope mixed in their voices. Lyra stepped forward. "But how? We have no heavy weapons strong enough to destroy a ship that size." Jack gave a small smile. "We don't need heavy weapons. We need to outsmart them." He quickly explained his bold plan. He and 2 of his best soldiers would use a hidden tunnel that led outside the village walls. From there, they would sneak through the battlefield to reach a rocky hill where one of their old ground-to-air cannons had been hidden long ago. The cannon was damaged, but Jack believed he could repair it fast enough to fire one shot aimed at the command ship's weak point. The villagers listened in silence. They knew it was risky, but they trusted Jack. He had already saved them once, maybe he could do it again. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Let me come with you." Jack shook his head gently. "No, Lyra. I need you here. If I fail, the villagers will need a leader. Someone they trust. That must be you." Lyra hesitated, but she nodded. "I will protect them. I promise." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, then turned to his soldiers. "Let's move." The 3 humans disappeared into the hidden tunnel, leaving Lyra and the villagers behind. The seconds felt like hours as they waited. Above them, the command ship began to lower, its weapons powering up. Loudspeakers warned the villagers one last time. Surrender now or be destroyed. But no one surrendered. Meanwhile, Jack and his soldiers crawled through the dark, narrow tunnel. The ground shook above them as the enemy ships fired warning shots. Dust rained down on their heads, but they kept moving. At the tunnel's exit, they emerged quietly behind a pile of rocks. In front of them, enemy soldiers walked back and forth, guarding the field. Jack whispered to his men, "Stay low. Follow me." Using the smoke and confusion from earlier fighting, Jack led his team carefully through the battlefield. Step by step, they crept toward the old hill where the forgotten cannon stood. When they reached it, Jack knelt beside the weapon. It was covered in dirt and rust, wires loose and lights dead. He quickly opened the side panel and began working. His fingers moved fast, reconnecting wires, replacing fuses from spare parts he had brought. His soldiers watched the skies nervously. Time was running out back in the village. Lyra watched the enemy ship slowly descend. The villagers stayed silent, holding their breath, hoping, praying that Jack would succeed. She felt her heart pound in her chest. If Jack failed, they would all die. Suddenly, a deep hum filled the air. The old cannon on the hill powered up. Its lights flickered on, glowing weakly but alive. Jack grinned. "It's working," he whispered. He aimed carefully, adjusting the cannon's sights. The enemy command ship was close now, hovering low and slow, preparing to fire at the village. Jack found its weak point, a small glowing area near the bottom, where the engines connected. He took a deep breath, steadying his hand. Then he pressed the trigger. A bright beam shot out from the cannon, streaking through the morning sky. It struck the command ship exactly where Jack aimed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a huge explosion ripped through the air. The ship shook violently, flames bursting from its engines. Alarms blared as it began to tip sideways, smoke pouring from its sides. In the village, cheers broke out as the villagers saw the enemy ship falter. The mercenaries on the ground panicked, looking up in horror. Without their leadership, they lost their will to fight. One by one, they dropped their weapons and fled into the hills. Disappearing into the dust, the burning command ship crashed into the far fields with a loud roar, shaking the ground. Jack lowered the cannon slowly, sweat on his face, but a smile in his eyes. He had done it. From the village walls, Lyra shouted with joy. He did it. Captain Jack did it. The villagers cheered louder, hugging each other. They had survived. They had won. Jack climbed down the hill and met his soldiers with a nod. "Let's go home," he said quietly. The battle was over for now, but even as they celebrated, Jack knew that Krell was still out there. The next threat would come one day, but so would hope. The village of Jerax was peaceful for the first time in many years. Days passed quietly. The villagers rebuilt their homes, repaired broken walls, and planted new crops in the dry fields. Children laughed again, playing in the dusty streets. Every day, they thanked Captain Jack Sloan for saving them from the mercenaries. But deep inside, Jack knew this peace would not last. Krell was still alive. Jack stood at the top of the village wall every night, watching the dark hills beyond. He could feel Krell's shadow out there, waiting, planning. Krell would not forget the humiliation of defeat. He would return, and this time, Jack suspected Krell would bring an army that no small village could stop. One night, as Jack checked the perimeter, a villager ran up to him, out of breath and pale. "Captain, a ship. It's coming fast. No lights, no signal." Jack's heart sank. "Sound the alarm," he ordered. The villagers rushed to their positions, but this time they were ready. Thanks to Jack's training, everyone knew what to do. Even the children ran quickly to safe places. Lyra moved through the streets calmly, giving orders, encouraging her neighbors. She had become a true leader. The dark ship flew low over the village, circling once before landing on the far hill. A single figure stepped out, tall, dressed in black armor, a cold mask over his face. It was Krell, but this time he was not alone. Behind him marched a line of soldiers, not rough raiders or mercenaries, but a professional private army. Well-trained and heavily armed. Their black uniforms glowed with strange symbols. Their weapons were large and deadly. Krell's voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Jerax, you should have stayed weak. You should have stayed quiet. Now I return, and I bring my full power. No one will save you this time, not even your brave human captain." Jack stepped forward to the top of the main gate. "You lost once, Krell," he called out. "You can lose again." Krell laughed darkly. "This time, I've brought more than men. I have brought machines." At his command, the ground shook as heavy combat walkers tall, armored machines with blaster cannons, marched forward from his ship. The villagers gasped in fear. The walkers were too strong. Even Jack's soldiers looked unsure. Jack felt the weight of the moment. The villagers were brave, but they could not win a fight against such machines. Then an idea came to him. "Jack, turn to Lyra. There's only one way we survive this. We must trick Krell." Lyra nodded. "Tell me what to do." Jack quickly explained his bold plan. The villagers would pretend to surrender, opening the gates and letting Krell's forces enter the village square. But hidden around the square would be explosives, the last remaining stock from Jack's outpost, secretly buried when the villagers rebuilt. If they could lure the machines into the trap, they could destroy Krell's entire force in one strike. The villagers agreed, though they were afraid. Jack gave the signal. The gates slowly opened. Lyra stepped out first, raising a white cloth. "We surrender," she called. "Please spare us." Krell smiled under his mask. He marched his army straight into the village square, confident and cruel. His machines followed, towering over the villagers at the perfect moment. Jack gave the hidden signal a small radio click. The ground exploded beneath. Krell's army, blinding light and thunderous sound filled the square. The walkers toppled, torn apart by the blasts. Krell's soldiers scattered in panic, running for cover. In seconds, his entire force was broken. Krell himself was thrown to the ground, his armor damaged and cracked. Jack appeared beside him, rifle aimed straight at Krell's head. "It's over," Jack said coldly. Krell laughed weakly. You taught them to fight, but others will come. You cannot protect them forever, human." Jack's voice was steady. "Maybe not. But today you lost, and tomorrow they will still stand." With those words, Krell was taken away. His soldiers captured or chased from the village. The villagers gathered around Jack. They cheered not just because they had won, but because they had won together. They were no longer weak, no longer afraid. Lyra stood beside Jack, smiling. "You didn't just save us, Captain. You taught us how to save ourselves." Jack looked around at the strong, proud faces. He knew his work here was done. The next day, as the sun rose over a peaceful Jerax, Jack prepared to leave. His soldiers packed their gear. Before he left, Lyra hugged him tightly. "Will we see you again?" she asked softly. Jack smiled. "You don't need me anymore," he said. "But I'll always be watching the stars. If you ever call, I'll come back." Then he climbed aboard his ship and flew away, leaving behind a village that would never be weak again as his ship disappeared. Into the sky, the villagers of Jerax stood tall, strong, united, and full of hope for the future.